Anyway, speaking along the same lines of, you know, companies taking advantage of their power in the marketplace, here we have the United States or several states alleging Google, the tech giant, of being unlawfully preserving their monopoly through their Play Store. Now, obviously, in terms of applications, you have only two primarily uses, either Apple's iOS Play Store, and then you have Google's apps Play Store here also. Now, according to Reuters.com, they mentioned that 37 United States and District Attorneys General sued the Alphabet Inc., which owns Google, the company. So, alleging, to the extreme of buying off competitors, so to eliminate competition, and using restrictive contracts to unlawfully maintain a monopoly for its app store on Android phones. Now, uh, Google hasn't been at what do you call this? Hasn't been at worse position compared to Apple regarding their theft with Epic Games, but nonetheless, obviously outside of Google's Android App Store, there's no other alternative for companies to choose, and you'd be surprised as to how far they're going to protect their interest and their market hold in the industry here. It also mentions, where was it? There you go. It also mentions that the cases threatens to force major changes as to how it generates billions of dollars of its revenue across its businesses. So obviously, it has a large revenue generated from its advertising, in-app purchases, as well as devices that they sell, whether through smartphones or home gadgets and so forth. Now, what's interesting here is Google is stating that the litigation was just about boosting a handful of major app developers that want preferential treatment rather than about helping small businesses or consumers. Now, if they're, you know, whether they have a point, we have to wait and see. Now, according to the company, they mentioned that Android and Google Play provide openness and choice that other platforms simply don't. Well, technically, there are only another platform, so how can we compare if the actually technically the App Store is not in similar range because they're not in the Android ecosystem. So maybe there's something more to it. Anyway, so according to the Utah, New York, North Carolina, and even Tennessee states argue that they generated enormous profit margins, so by using their Play Store, by engaging illegal tactics to preserve monopolies. Now, obviously, if you're the only primary marketplace for conducting, downloading games, apps, or even books and so forth, so you have to play hardball with Google. Now, whether that's fair or not, only the governments can decide here. Obviously, that's why now they're up in arms, and there are agreements. As an example, there were agreements that already targeted based on the lawsuit that Google has with mobile carriers. So meaning it's not just dealing with the App Store itself, but going beyond, going to the extreme of collaborating in a sense with mobile carriers, even smartphone makers to promote its services. So when you talk of mobile carriers, is the T-Mobile, Verizon in the United States, and in terms of smartphone makers, you have Samsung. Is one of their main competitors if you think about it. And what are they willing to do at extreme levels? Well, Google even bought off developers. So buying off or maybe pressuring them so that they would not support competing app stores in other platforms. So obviously, if you're developing develop apps, it makes sense that you support, Google's App Store. Otherwise, if not, you will be given preferential treatment of sorts. And not only that, there are numerous secret projects that it intended to pay Samsung Electronics. So obviously, one of the big risks there is Samsung is a big, smartphone maker, and they could technically go into creating their own app ecosystem because they have such a big market position in the global region, not just in the United States but elsewhere around the world. And obviously, if you're Google, you would be concerned about this. So to gain a significant foothold, you'd like to be able to find a way, partner with, in this case, Samsung, or in this case, give them a substantial incentive to maybe you don't compete with us in the App Store or developing a platform to compete with us. Otherwise, it makes sense if Samsung, which sells millions and millions of units every year, and create their own app, then it would make sense for them to, get different developer apps to just, shift to a different platform and, make a certain amount of money. And not only that, Google has unlawfully mandated that some apps use companies' payment tools and give Google as much as 30% of each digital good sales, which is another issue with regards to the antitrust case that's being levied upon the big tech companies. Is 30% too big? And obviously, if using the platform has to be a fee, is 30% reasonable? And obviously, Google is using their other businesses to leverage their strength and foothold in the App Store here. And actually, some are saying that they are considered extravagant commission, and compared to other marketplaces that charge only a measly 3% here. So you're given little to no choice as to, if you don't play ball with Google, you don't have any other marketplace to work with, right? And what's interesting here, the government or those different states are also considering similar actions over Apple, which, it should have been done years ago rather than, I guess, better late than never. And in other areas in Europe, they're being investigated already. So hopefully they make more headway faster rather than later.